Namaste. Welcome back to the 21st episode of a 100-part Rāmānuja Refutation series. From 14th episode onwards, we have taken up one of the most dangerous sectarian, intellectually dishonest pieces of commentary, Rāmānuja's treatment on Bhagavad Gītā 2.12. We have gone line by line, exposed every stretch, every manipulation, every anti-Śruti Smriti twist. All motivated not by Bhagavan Kṛṣṇa, not by Bhagavad Gītā, not by Upaniṣads, but by commitment to the fivefold structure of Pāñcharātra and fixation to an afterlife abode called Vaikuntha as moksha. Today we reach his final concluding paragraph on 2.12, where after his all failed arguments, he tries one last desperate objection against Advaita. And today we show clearly and decisively why this final paragraph is the self-destruction of Vishishtadvaita's entire anti-Advaita stance. Rāmānuja says, Kincha guroho advitiya atma vijnanadeva brahma ajnanasya sakaryasya vinashtatvat shishyam prati upadeshaha nishprayojanaha. If the guru has really attained the knowledge of non-duality and thereby the ignorance is removed, then teaching the student is purposeless. This is what Rāmānuja says in the first line. If that is your logic, then why is Bhagavan Kṛṣṇa even teaching Arjuna? According to Rāmānuja, Bhagavan Kṛṣṇa should not be teaching at all because he is Sarvagnya, he is ever free and he has no ignorance to destroy. Yet Bhagavan Kṛṣṇa teaches 700 verses, 18 chapters, gives Upadesha again and again, and he says, Śrutva api na veda kaśyata. Even after hearing again and again, people like Rāmānuja fail to understand. If Rāmānuja is right, then the entire teaching of Bhagavad Gītā becomes purposeless. Maybe actually that's what Rāmānuja really wants. As we see that there is no real purpose of Vedānta Shastra for an afterlife heaven committed Pāñcharātric sect. Remember, the first sutra of Brahma Sutra, Vedavyasji says, Athato Brahma Jignasa. Vedanta Shastra is not for someone who is committed to afterlife promises, prefixated ideas about God without proper Shastric evidence. But the Vedanta Shastra is for someone who wants to understand Brahman through Shastra, as Shastra alone here is Pramana. And Swatav Pramanam doesn't require support of any sectarian guidebook to fill up gaps and to be made complete. This is what happens when someone attacks without even properly understanding the scriptures. What Pramana means and how the Shastra Pramana alone reveals this subject matter Brahman. Knowledge of Brahman destroys the misunderstandings of Brahman and not the perception per se. So a Jnani, a Sthita Prajna, continues to live and even teach. And this enlightened person, Jnani, is pointed out in many places all throughout Bhagavad Gītā. Tattvavid, Sthita Prajna, Gunatita, etc. Rāmānuja doesn't understand this or ignores it because it sabotages his argument. Thus, line 1 of Rāmānuja collapses. By his own logic and verse, it invalidates the entire Bhagavad Gītā. In the second and the third line of this paragraph, Rāmānuja says, Guruhu tad jnanam cha kalpitam iti chet, shishya tad jnanayoho api kalpitatvat tadapi anivartakam. Kalpitatve api purva virodhitvena nivartakam iti chet, tad acharya jnanam api samanam iti tadeva nivartakam bhavati iti upadesha anarthakyam eva. He says, if guru and the knowledge are kalpita and then shishya and his knowledge is kalpita, then how can that remove ignorance? This is the biggest blunder in Rāmānuja's commentary. He thinks kalpita is imaginary like hallucination, but the Upanishads themselves use the word eva vikaro namadheya to denote apparent reality and not non-existence. Let us go through Śruti one by one. Brihadaranyaka Śruti says, Yatra hi dvaitam eva bhavati. The word eva reveals that Dvaita is Kalpita. Chandogya Śruti says, Vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam mritika ityeva satyam. That vikara is namadheya, pointing out it is Kalpita. In Bhagavad Gītā 259, Bhagavan Kṛṣṇa says, Param drishtva nivartate. In 269, Bhagavan Kṛṣṇa says, Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagarti sayami. To which the knower of absolute is awake, ignorant is asleep to that fact. In 272, Bhagavan Kṛṣṇa says, Esha Brahmi Sthiti, and also uses another word, Brahma Nirvana, all pointing out having understood Brahman as absolute, the Advaita is resolved. That's pointing out Kalpita. In 629, Bhagavan Kṛṣṇa says, Sarva Bhutani Atmani Eva Pashyati. In 7.7, Bhagavan Kṛṣṇa says, Mayi Sarvam Idam Protam. In 2.17 and 8.22, Bhagavan Kṛṣṇa says, Yena Sarvam Idam Tat. All revealing Atma as Brahman, which is absolute, non-dual, and the duality being apparent. Kalpita. Remember, for understanding the reality, Tattvam, here the only and only source, means of knowledge is Shastra, and specifically Vedānta Shastra. So we are not here to teach Shastra how it is supposed to talk, but understand in keeping with what Shastra is saying. This is what is actually called Pramanya Buddhi, which is missing in Rāmānuja. Kalpita points out it is empirically real, but not absolute. And to use example of the Śruti itself, like pots and clay, and also like sunrise and sunset, which are empirically seen. But when you zoom out a bit, and then all directions cease to exist, where the sun really doesn't rise, doesn't set. Even then, all the life forms depend on this itself. The whole circadian rhythm is based on the sun. Dvaita is exactly like that. Ramanuja behaves like a stubborn, fixated kid and fails to understand the true teaching of the Vedanta Shastra. Finally, Ramanuja says, Iti kritam asamichi navadaihi nirastaihi. Ramanuja himself trumpets his victory, saying Advaita is unsound and refuted. This is the most ironic statement in Ramanuja's Bhashya, because in every episode from 14 to today's 21, he never quotes Bhagavad Gītā to argue against Advaita. He never quotes Upaniṣads in their original sense. He never establishes his own theology from Śruti. And his whole approach is to fit the Pāñcharātra fivefold structure into the Vedanta Shastra and tailor a new theology and system called Vishishtadvaita and prove his supremacy over Jagadguru Adi Śaṅkara. And we have even shown how he has misquoted the Śruti Vakyas and Smriti Vakyas to prove plurality, where contextually they really reveal Advaita. This is the reason why his commentary is not supported by the Bhagavad Gītā itself, which is an actually surprise to see. Because commentary on any work is to explain the work better, but not to destroy the very teaching of it. The only pramana he follows is his sectarian theology, cherry-picking verses from here and there which don't sabotage his argument. And now, after pages of misinterpretation, he says, enough of these unsound doctrines. Yes, enough indeed. Enough of these Avaidika distortions. Enough of Pāñcharātra masquerading as Vedanta. From 14th episode to the present 21st episode, we have dismantled Rāmānuja's misuse of Atma Achalaha, Sarvagataha, Yena Sarvamidam Tatam, exposed his refusal to accept 212, 215, 216, 217, which talks about non-dual consciousness appearing as many, exposed his constant avoidance of the Upanishad Vakyas, which are the actual pramana for Tattvam, shown how every one of his argument collapses if once the Bhagavad Gītā itself is allowed to speak. And today, in the 21st episode, we have demonstrated Rāmānuja's final paragraph is not a refutation, it's a surrender. The moment he declares that teaching becomes purposeless after enlightenment, he has defeated Kṛṣṇa teaching Arjuna, all Jnanis teaching their disciples, entire Guru Shishya Parampara of the Sanatana Dharma, and ultimately himself, because he too teaches. Only and only because of fixation with the idea that Parabrahma is deity Vishnu, who is sitting in Vaikuntha, and going there alone is moksha. This concluding paragraph is the final demonstration of what happens when sectarian fixation overtakes the Śruti and Smriti. Not just that, the sectarian heads try to twist the Vedanta Shastra to protect their own Pāñcharātra and Vaikuntha. Om Tat Sat.